Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. We have a great show for you as we head into the Christmas week. First, Luigi Mangione appeared in court again today. President Biden commutes the sentences for all but 3 prisoners on federal death row. A woman was set on fire while sleeping on a New York subway. Wait till you hear this story. Linda Stanley, the former prosecutor of Barry Morphew, has more problems than just losing her law license. Yeah, the county wants their money back. The teacher learns her fate for sleeping with a student, but don't worry, the victim's mother is going to raise the love child. And how would you react if this was your daughter? How many times have I told all you TikTok pranksters, don't live stream the crime scene? We have this day in legal history and our dumb criminal of the day. Let's talk about it.
Hi, lawyer.
Good day, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. You know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't. Like if you do. Leave me a comment below and hit that little bell for notifications. And you can check us out on any of your favorite podcasting apps as well. Now, before we get started, you may think, well, it's Christmas time. Everything is good in the world. Everybody shows their best selves. No, ladies and gentlemen, I hate to say it. This is when the con men strike. Criminal defense attorney, 30 years. I'm telling you, I'm warning you people, be careful. And if anyone new is coming into your life, you need to check them out. Go to crimetalksearch.com, sign up for that background subscription service today. You're going to be happy you did. Literally get a background report emailed to you while you wait on anybody here in the United States. And remember, you can cancel at any time. What a great stocking stuffer idea for all of your family members. Think about it. All right, let's go ahead and get to the docket today for Monday, December 23rd, 2024. First, Luigi Mangione. That's right, a smiling Luigi Mangione appeared to be kind of yucking it up in court today as he pled not guilty to first-degree murder for the United Healthcare killing of CEO Brian Thompson. Now, Mangione walked into the Manhattan Supreme Court about 9:30 this morning. His feet were chained. He was wearing a maroon sweater over a white collared shirt, tan khaki pants, and his orange prison flip-flops, an outfit that's oddly matched his attorney's attire. Now, at least 24 women, fans apparently, of Mangione packed the courtroom, and another 6 men were watching as well. When asked by the court clerk, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty, Mangione replied, not guilty. Now, during the hearing, Mangione flashed a grin and looked around the courtroom to his onlookers. Anyway, his attorney argued before the judge and the district attorney that she was very concerned about her client's right to a fair trial. He's being prejudiced by some of the statements made by the government, his attorneys argued, and he's a young man and he's being treated like a human ping pong ball. Anyway, the attorney who also arrived at 8:30 alongside her husband, who also represents P. Diddy, then slammed Mayor Adams and the NYPD for Mangione's perp walk last week, calling Adams' appearance unconstitutional. The mayor should know more than anyone about the presumption of innocence. He was trying to distract from his own issues. As you may recall, the mayor's been indicted as well for corruption and a sundry of other things like taking money from other people. You know. Anyway, the perp walk came after Mangione arrived in the Big Apple last week by helicopter after a brief extradition hearing in Pennsylvania. Now, he had been expected to be arraigned in state court after his indictment on 11 counts, including the first-degree murder charges in furtherance of terrorism. But to the surprise of his lawyers, Mr. Mangione was carted to the Manhattan federal courtroom for an arraignment on a parallel charges leveled by the feds there in the Southern District of New York. And Monday's arraignment was the second court appearance in New York for Mangione, who also faces, like I said, the federal charges. And he has not yet been asked to enter a plea in that case. That is before a federal magistrate. And that magistrate ordered Mangione detained on December 19th when they had the brief hearing last week in court. Now, the federal charges would make him eligible for the death penalty. Clearly unlikely that they're going to do that. And the separate and federal state cases will proceed in parallel. The state case is currently expected to go to trial first, according to federal prosecutors. Now, the surprise federal case came after the health insurance industry leaders leaned on the Department of Justice to take up this case against Mangione as a deterrent against copycat killers. We'll see. Anyway, the alleged assassin will remain in the Federal Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, even as the Southern District prosecutors say they'll let the DAs go first. They want to keep him in primary federal custody so that they don't lose him, so to speak. And then now the states have to do their 11-point memorandum to have him writted over to the state court appearances. Now, as Mangione exited the courtroom, one woman supporter shyly flashed him the thumbs up. Outside the courtroom, there were 30 supporters of Mangione chanting and held up signs in support of him. Now, as you may recall, Mr. Mangione fled the 5 boroughs after allegedly shooting Mr. Thompson with a ghost gun on December 4th outside the Hilton Hotel in Midtown before taking off on a bicycle and hopping a train out of New York. Next, why does Mr. Mangione not have to worry about the federal death penalty, at least 28 days or something like that? Well, President Biden this morning commuted the sentence of 37 of the 40 men on federal death row. Now, that list includes at least 5 child killers and several mass murderers, while leaving off 3 notorious criminals. In this stunning act of clemency just 2 days before Christmas, Biden gave the reprieve to some of the nation's most violent murderers, 9 of whom were found too dangerous to live after butchering fellow inmates as part of his effort at ensuring fair and effective justice system, the White House press secretary said. "Make no mistake, I condemn these murders, grieve for the victims of their despicable acts, and ache for all the families who have suffered an unimaginable and irreparable loss," Biden said in a statement. "But guided by my conscience and my experience as a public defender, chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, vice president, and now president, I am more convinced than ever that we must stop the use of the death penalty at the federal level. In good conscience, I cannot stand back and let a new administration resume executions that I had halted." Biden, who opposed the death penalty, lowered each of the 37 sentences to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and he did not say why specifically he considered the original penalties unjust. Now, the 3 men on federal death row who didn't get the commutation were the Boston Marathon bomber, Mr. Zarnoff, who, along with his brother, killed 3 people in 2013, Robert Bowers, who killed 11 at a Pittsburgh synagogue in 2018, and Dylan Roof, who killed 9 black Charleston churchgoers back in 2015. Among those receiving the Christmas cheer is Thomas Sanders, who in 2010 kidnapped and then shot 12-year-old Lexus Roberts 4 times and then cut her throat in Louisiana. Days after the girl watched as Sanders murdered her mother on a road trip to the Grand Canyon. And Christmas also came early for Anthony Battle, who murdered an Atlanta prison guard with a hammer back in 1994 while serving a life sentence for raping and murdering his wife, a United States Marine, back in 1987 at Camp Lejeune. Let's not forget about Jorge Avila Torres, who sexually assaulted and stabbed to death 2 girls, Laura Hobbs, 8, and Crystal Tobias, 9 years old, who had been riding their bicycles in the neighborhood of a suburb of North Chicago in 2005. 4 years later, he strangled a naval officer, Amanda Snell, inside her barracks in Arlington, Virginia. And then we have Laurel McKell, another clemency recipient, who was convicted of murdering 5 Russian and Georgian immigrants after kidnapping them for ransom, which in some cases was paid before he killed them anyway. Caboni Savage, meanwhile, was convicted of committing and ordering the deaths of 12 people, including 4 children, as a Philadelphia drug dealer, while James Rohn Jr. participated in the murder of 11 people as a drug dealer in Richmond, Virginia. Now, Biden used his power of clemency in the past month, and obviously he will be out of the office here shortly. And let's not forget, he gave a blanket pardon for his own son, Hunter Biden, wiping the slate clean from the last 10 years, plus his tax evasion and federal gun charges. Now, Biden also commuted nearly 1,500 sentences on December 12th for people who had been temporarily released from prison during the COVID-19 pandemic, including Josephine Gray, the Black Widow who killed 2 of her ex-husbands and a 3rd lover, and Rita Crunwell, who was the comptroller of Dixon, Illinois, who stole nearly $54 million from the 15,000-person town over 2 decades. Now, despite the controversial actions, Biden has outraged cannabis activists by thus far failing to honor his 2019 campaign pledge to release everyone in prison for marijuana. Instead, just before the 2022 midterm elections, he announced the mass pardon for people convicted of simple possession, of whom none were in prison, drawing outrage from there. Now, understand, ladies and gentlemen, the power of clemency is one of the powers that the king had, and the president has that, just like the governor has it for state offenses in their state. It's unchecked, which that's the way it's always been. The president can pardon somebody, wipe everything clean, or give clemency, which means to commute or reduce a sentence or punishment. If you don't like it, there's not much you can do. It's done. It's over. I think a lot of people will be outraged. I'm sure those families will be outraged. The law does in fact exist. The death penalty is at least referenced in the Constitution under the 5th Amendment, where they clearly state that the government can take your life, liberty, or property as long as they give you due process of law. So whether you agree with the death penalty or don't, and people have mixed feelings about it, lots of people do, I get it. I don't know. Let me know how you feel. Was it a good thing or a bad thing? Next on the docket, just when you thought it was safe to get back on the subways in New York, apparently it's not. Where's Daniel Penny when you need him? Well, a migrant from Guatemala who was here illegally is accused of setting a subway rider on fire and gawking as she burned to death, was once deported, but sneaked back into the United States and got back to the Big Apple and utilized their shelter system, according to police authorities. Now, the accused arsonist, who has not yet been charged, first entered the United States illegally at the Arizona border back in 2018, but was nabbed just days later and shipped back home. He later crossed the border again, dodging federal agents and finding his way north to the 5 boroughs, although it's unclear how long he was in New York City before the fire was set on the F train on Sunday. What is clear that by April 2023, he was staying at a Days Inn hotel on 36th Street, which has been converted into a migrant shelter, the first of 4 tax-funded facilities in the city of New York. Now, when he was issued a transit ticket in 2023, he gave an address for a shelter on Randall's Island. Now, on Sunday, police reported he was at the Coney Island Stillwell Avenue subway station, calmly watching the sleeping passenger he allegedly set on fire as she burned to death. Now, video obtained shows cops swarming the scene, with the migrant getting up and then just simply walking away. But police nabbed him and took him into custody. Now, law enforcement sources said the man is being held pending the autopsy results of the victim. Now, prosecutors are now awaiting word on whether the flames caused the woman's death, which could mean murder charges against the suspect. You think? He set her on fire, ladies and gentlemen. It's on video. Anyway, the prosecutors in this case say the depravity of this horrific crime is beyond comprehension, and their office is committed to bringing the perpetrator to justice. Just remember, ladies and gentlemen, police usually don't prevent crime. They just show up to try to arrest somebody. Anyway, others have commented saying this gruesome and senseless act of violence against a vulnerable woman will be met with the most serious consequences. And every New Yorker deserves to feel safe on our subways, and we will do everything in our power to ensure accountability in this case. Now, the suspect does not appear to have any previous criminal history. And, like everybody, guess what? He's entitled to the presumption of innocence, so we will give that to him. But if you are allegedly accused of setting somebody on fire, you'll get the presumption of innocence, but that's just wrong. That's just wrong in so many ways. That is complete evil, ladies and gentlemen. Next, remember that former Barry Morphew prosecutor? Yeah, remember the one that got disbarred? She's got new problems. So a lawsuit has been filed by the Fremont and Chaffee County and Custer counties against the former 11th Judicial District Attorney Linda Stanley to recoup tens of thousands of dollars in taxpayer money that she allegedly used to pay for her own legal fees in her ethics trial. Now, the former district attorney for the 11th Judicial District, who is responsible for prosecuting crimes in Fremont, Custer, Chaffee, and Park counties, was disbarred by the state of Colorado following two separate incidents of ethics violations and misconduct in her position as the district attorney. First, she botched the prosecution of Barry Morphew, the husband of Suzanne Morphew, who went missing in May of 2020. And then Stanley charged Barry Morphew murdering his wife before the case was later dismissed by a judge without prejudice, meaning it could be refiled in the future if they had any credible evidence to go forward. Anyway, the second mess up came when Stanley's comments in an on-air recorded interview with a local TV station back in August of 2023 about the accused baby killer Williams Jacobs from Canyon City. In that interview, Stanley claimed that the defendant was only hanging out with the mother of the child he was accused of killing just to get laid. It was those comments, among others in the interview, about the case that led to Jacobs' charges being dropped in 2024 over what the state deemed was outrageous governmental conduct. The judge presiding over the case explaining in her decision that the DA Stanley knew or reasonably should have known that her on-the-record comments to reporters about Mr. Jacobs and co-defendants Ms. Crawford could be disseminated by means of public communications and that they would have a substantial likelihood of materially prejudicing the judicial proceedings. Now, Stanley was already under fire by the state, bringing her law license into question through an ethics trial. Eventually, the state felt there was enough evidence and motioned to disbar Stanley in September of 2024. That led then to the lawsuit filed on December 5th by the county commissioners from Fremont, Chaffee, and Custer counties who claimed Stanley had committed fraud and civil theft against the counties. In the lawsuit, attorneys alleged that Stanley spent $111,971.35 in public funds to pay for her legal fees racked up by her and members of her staff in the state ethics trial so they could defend themselves against allegations that they had violated the rules of professional conduct. The suit explains that a letter was provided to Stanley back in June of 2024 warning her that she was not allowed to use those taxpayer dollars as it was a violation of Colorado law. Well, the Fremont County then says that they reminded Stanley of the consequences of those violations again back in September of 2024. The lawsuit continues to claim that by Stanley paying for her legal fees, which they allege were not necessary expenses to maintain an office, she willfully and knowingly fraudulently converted funds appropriated by Fremont County to her own use and benefits and to use them for something other than what was authorized. Now, it's alleged that during the budget request meetings with the boards of commissioners, Stanley failed to disclose her intentions to use the actual use of public funds for matters unrelated to the official operation of the office. It continued to allege that at no time during her term in office as the 11th DA did Stanley request or propose a budget amendment to reflect the use of those public funds either. As for the claim for civil theft within the lawsuit, attorneys state that the misappropriation of public funds by Stanley constituted theft. They also allege that Stanley knowingly obtained, retained, and exercised control of public funds without authorization and by threat or deception. Now, the kicker for the civil theft statute here in Colorado is that the plaintiffs can get 3 times treble damages, 3 times what they're alleging. So that 100 times 3. Anyway, the lawsuit concludes by request of a jury trial, asking the court to award judgment expenses stemming from the following: for actual damages suffered from the plaintiffs as the amount determined at trial, for treble damages, like I just mentioned, for pre-judgment and post-judgment interest. That means you get interest from the time that the money was stolen till it's paid, and the attorney's fees and costs provided by law, and any other relief that the court deems reasonable. Linda Stanley, I don't know what to say. It just spiraled out of control for her. She handled the Morphew case unprofessionally. Obviously wasn't ready to go to trial, as evidenced by statements by the investigators working the case. She didn't care, went forward with it, and that's what happens when you get a little overzealous. Anyway, we wish her luck. Next, a Tennessee teacher finds out her fate. That's right, a former Tennessee teacher from the Charger Academy has been sentenced to 25 years in prison as part of a plea deal on charges of child rape and sexual misconduct. Alyssa McCommon had been set to head to trial on January 21st of next month, but during a hearing on December 20th, they went forward with a plea deal. Now, McCommon had originally been indicted on 23 counts under a deal. She pled guilty and was sentenced to 25 years at 100% for her time to serve for rape of a child, 8 years at 100% for statutory by an authority figure, 2 years at 100% for aggravated statutory rape, 3 counts, 2 years at 100% for sexual exploitation of a minor by electronic means, 2 years at 100% for solicitation of a minor to commit aggravated statutory 2 years at 100% for violation of the Child Protective Act, and the judge ordered the sentences to run concurrently, meaning McCommon will serve 25 years without parole. She was also ordered to be supervised for life under the Tennessee Sex Offender Registry as a violent sexual offender and ordered to have no contact with the victim. The judge also ordered that, guess what, her teaching license has been revoked. Now, the district attorney said his office had full support from the victims for the plea deal, and he also confirmed that McCommon gave birth to a child fathered by one of the victims, and the mother of the child victim now has custody of the baby. Can't make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. Anyways, you may recall when Miss McCommon was arrested, the arrest affidavit said that a 16-year-old student came forward to police saying that when he was just 12, he stayed in McCommon's apartment when she performed sex on him without consent. Detectives later identified 21 potential victims during their 7th-month investigation, and the prosecutor said 5 of those victims' ages ranged from 12 to 17. You may also recall, because we brought you the story, she was originally arrested in September and booked into the jail for the charge of child. The next day, she posted the $25,000 bond and were released by the court on condition that she have no contact with the victim or any minor in this case. However, investigators said they received information that as early as September 26, that Ms. McCommon had contacted the child using a formerly unknown phone number, and McCommon previously would text the victim using a code word to ensure that the child was alone, often sending nude photographs on Snapchats. Now, according to the police, McCommon used the code word again and sent text messages to the victim saying that he would regret doing this and admitted to the sexual encounter with the young boy. She was promptly then rearrested on the 28th, just 2 days later. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. It used to just be you had to worry about the guys hanging around the students in schools. Now you got to worry about the women. Be careful, ladies and gentlemen. Did I ever mention CrimeTalkSearch.com? Have I ever mentioned that? Check it out. Next, father's justice. How would you react in this situation? So a man is now being charged with the second-degree murder and the shooting death of a man he says he found late at night inside a truck with his 14-year-old daughter. So the prosecuting attorney, a guy by the name of Chuck Graham, is bringing the charge with an enhancement seeking a higher sentence for the use of a firearm against 36-year-old Aaron Spencer, who will have his plea arraignment before a judge in Lonoke County. Now, Mr. Spencer called the sheriff on the night of October 8th to report that his 14-year-old daughter was missing. Well, Sheriff John Stanley described the call during an interview back in October. Hey, my daughter, I can't find her. She's not in her room. Calls for a missing juvenile. And then Tuesday, about 1 o'clock in the morning, as we arrive at the scene, we get the second 911 call of a shooting. The second call was from Spencer, informing authorities that he had found his daughter inside the truck with a 67-year-old man by the name of Michael Foster. He said the two men got into a dispute, ultimately leading to Spencer's opening fire and killing Mr. Foster. The girl was not injured. It was just down the road. Deputies arrived. Spencer was detained because it was a homicide. Now, Spencer's family had a no-contact order in place for Mr. Foster because he had stalked and raped the 14-year-old over the summer. The police took the report of an inappropriate relationship and sexual misconduct. We realized it was in a different jurisdiction. We forwarded it to the detectives in this other jurisdiction. He was subsequently arrested back in July and placed in the detention center. The initial charges were rape and internet stalking, and I believe those charges were added, such as child pornography. Anyway, the child's mother had thought that this time Foster might be trying to kill her daughter because he was facing 6 to 9 felonies, and her daughter was the only witness. This guy preyed upon their daughter, was released on bond, and had stopped him the night that he got with her, according to the sheriff. Then in October, Sheriff Stanley expressed sympathy for Mr. Spencer. Now he says Aaron Spencer was acting as a father. There's no way that we're going to put the criminal ahead of our kids. Your kids, my kids, they're all our children. But the police had to arrest Mr. Spencer on the preliminary charge of first-degree murder in this case, which sparked outrage on social media. And the sheriff said, hey, ultimately it's the prosecutor that comes up with the charges. He said, my investigators have family. They have children. I'm a dad. And in any situation similar to this, I can't tell you I wouldn't act the same way. But now we are the fact finders. We don't file the charges. We supply the information so the prosecutors can make that determination of whether it is justified or not. Well, Spencer's attorney released a statement that said, we are not just disappointed, we are outraged by this decision. Aaron Spencer is a decorated war hero who protected this country and loving father whose heroic actions protected his family. He is certainly not a criminal. He did what any father would do and a trained combat veteran would do to protect his child from a predator. This predator repeatedly violated his child, and undeterred by criminal charges and release on low bond that pales in comparison to what was required for Aaron, kidnapped her in the dark of night to continue his assault on her. The systemic failures for decades that permitted this man to continue his abuse of women and children for years culminated in his facing a father who finally stopped him. No matter what the prosecuting attorney may do, Aaron, he was able to save his child and prevent the man's continued acts of sexual violence against the most vulnerable among us. Nothing could be more important than that. While the prosecutors has made it clear they intend to send Aaron to prison, even targeting his use of a legally owned firearm, and in spite of his past experience in combat, it is not the prosecutor who ultimately decides justice. It is the citizens, and we believe the citizens of this county and of the state will not allow this injustice, that this community will not allow a father protecting his child from a serial predator to be treated as a criminal. I don't know. This is like John Grisham, Time to Kill kind of book. You know, you see a jury convicting this guy? I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, sure, killing, wrong, must have legal excuse. Only 2 witnesses. Well, I guess the daughter. Well, 2 witnesses, 3 witnesses, and 1 isn't showing up. Sounds like self-defense to me. Try to disprove that beyond a reasonable doubt. All right, to all the TikTokers out there, how many times have I told you, don't live stream the crime scene? So TikTok prankster Charles Smith is facing charges including introducing poison, criminal damage, and endangerment after filming himself spraying pesticide on fresh produce at an Arizona Walmart store. Now, the press release came from the Mesa Police Department that Mr. Smith, known to TikTok as Wolf Khalidi, was arrested and charged on Saturday, December 21st for allegedly spraying deadly chemicals across several food items earlier this week. Police said about 8:30 p.m. local time, December 19th, Smith went into the Walmart located there in Mesa to film a video for TikTok. They alleged that the Mr. Smith picked up a can of Hot Shot Ultra Bedbug and Flea Killer and didn't pay for it. He then allegedly sprayed it across fresh produce and other food, including vegetables, fruit, and rotisserie chicken that were available for purchase. Now, in the now deleted TikTok video, Smith filmed himself picking up the pesticide can and spraying it across the food. Court documents state that Mr. Smith then left the store and then posted the video. Once he left, he began to see comments online saying how horrible the act was and how he decided to return and collect the items. Needless to say, Mr. Smith was identified. Police made contact with him, and he turned himself in voluntarily. And he, once interrogated, he admitted the theft and the spraying of the pesticide. Well, that stupid TikTok video, well, he got him charges of criminal damage, endangerment, and theft. They're all misdemeanors, as well as introducing poison, a Class 6 felony, the least severe charge in Arizona. Just stupid, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know why anybody would think that would be a good idea, even for a prank. Anyway, next on the docket, this day in legal history, December 23rd, 1783, George Washington resigned as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army in the Maryland State House. On this day in 1913, the Federal Reserve Act signed into law. President Woodrow Wilson signed the Federal Reserve Act, establishing the Federal Reserve System as the central banking authority for the United States. 1959, Chuck Berry, the musician, was arrested under the Mann Act, charging the musician in St. Louis, Missouri, accused him of violating the Mann Act by transporting a 14-year-old girl across state lines for allegedly having immoral purposes. I believe he ultimately married that young girl. And on December 23rd, 1997, Terry Nichols was found guilty of conspiracy and involuntary manslaughter for assisting Timothy McVeigh in the bombing of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. He was later sentenced to life in prison and I believe currently residing at the ADX facility down in Canyon City, Colorado. And on April 19th, 1995, McVeigh detonated the truck bomb that gutted the building and killed 168 people, making it the deadliest terrorist attack on U.S. soil until the attacks of September 11th. McVeigh was convicted of his role before Nichols on June 2nd of 1997. McVeigh, you may recall, was also given the death penalty, and he withdrew all his appeals and said, bring it on. Next, our dumb criminal of the day. Now, check out these repeated shoplifters in California. They get a harsh lesson of this new Prop 36, which is now in effect. Take a look at this. They go in, they steal, they get arrested, and all of a sudden you realize, well, you got to stay current on the laws. It turns out it could be a felony. All right, that's all we have for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Crime Talk, and have a wonderful Christmas if we don't see it before next week. And remember, the Constitution matters.